The air was crisp, and the glow of twinkling holiday lights filled the night with an undeniable sense of magic. Christmas Eve had always felt like something out of a storybook, with its promise of joy and wonder. I was just a kid then, maybe 7 or 8 years old, young enough to embrace the excitement of the season, yet old enough to start wondering about the mysteries that came with it. My dad had been dating a woman named Laura for a few months, and this year she was spending Christmas with us. It was a bit strange having her around, not in a bad way, but different. My mom had passed away when I was very young, so the idea of having a woman in the house for Christmas was something completely new to me. Laura wasn't my mom, but she was kind in her own way. She always smiled warmly at us and made an effort to join in our family traditions. I liked her well enough and found comfort in the way she brought a soft, feminine presence to our otherwise loud and chaotic home. The evening had been pleasant, filled with laughter and holiday cheer. My dad, my siblings, Laura, and I had all gathered in the living room, wrapped up in cozy blankets to watch Elf, which had become a family tradition over the years. The room was aglow with the twinkling lights from the Christmas tree, and the warm scent of cinnamon candles filled the air. Laura laughed along with us at all the funny parts, and for a while everything felt so normal and happy, like a perfect holiday moment. After the movie ended, my dad and Laura decided to head to bed. It wasn't unusual for them to turn in earlier than us kids. My brother, sister, and I stayed up a bit longer, our faces illuminated by the TV as we decided to watch the Polar Express. It was another family favorite, and the soothing rhythm of the train sounds always felt like the perfect lullaby for Christmas Eve. By the time the credits rolled, the clock had ticked well past midnight, and I was struggling to keep my eyes open. Sleep was calling, but so was my curiosity. Even though I was still a kid, I wasn't entirely naive. By that age, I'd started to have my doubts about Santa Claus. It wasn't that I wanted to stop believing, it was more that I'd started to notice things that didn't quite add up. Like how the handwriting on Santa's gift tags looked suspiciously like my dad's, or how the presents always seemed to appear after we'd gone to bed. That night, my curiosity got the better of me. I decided that this would be the year I'd find out the truth once and for all. If Santa was real, I'd see him with my own eyes. And if he wasn't, well, at least I'd have my answer. My bedroom was tucked away on the lower level of the house, while the living room and the towering Christmas tree were just a few steps up on the main floor. The house was silent now, except for the faint hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the walls adjusting to the cold. Slowly, I pushed open my bedroom door and tiptoed up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The glow of the Christmas tree lights spilled softly into the dark hallway, casting shimmering reflections on the walls. As I crept closer to the living room, I froze. The presents were already placed beneath the tree, neatly wrapped in shiny paper with big bows. For a moment, I felt a pang of disappointment, thinking I'd missed the chance to catch Santa or my dad putting them there. But then I saw her. Laura was crouched under the tree, her back to me, her hands moving quickly over something I couldn't quite make out. At first, I thought she was just putting the gifts under the tree, confirming my suspicions that Santa wasn't real. But then I saw her shaking the gifts, examining them. She wasn't placing them under the tree, she was trying to figure out what was inside. I froze in place, every muscle in my body tense as I watched Laura under the glow of the Christmas tree. She didn't notice me, her attention was completely focused on the gifts beneath the branches. She reached for a gift bag that I immediately recognized as one meant for my sister. It was decorated with shiny gold paper and a tag that had my sister's name scribbled in my dad's handwriting. Laura carefully dug inside the bag, her movements deliberate but oddly casual. She pulled out a makeup kit, holding it up to inspect it under the soft glow of the tree lights. For a moment, she just stood there, examining the box, as if trying to decide something about it. Then, just as calmly as she'd taken it out, she slipped the kit back into the bag and adjusted the tissue paper to make it look untouched. The whole thing was so strange. I couldn't make sense of it, but I also couldn't look away. My heart thudded in my chest, a mix of curiosity and unease keeping me rooted to the spot. Then, as if nothing had happened, Laura straightened up and walked toward the kitchen. I stayed perfectly still, my breath shallow as I followed her with my eyes. She moved with purpose, heading straight to the small ledge above the counter where my dad always kept his wallet. It was his usual spot for loose change, receipts, and whatever cash he carried. I watched, my confusion growing, as she reached up and grabbed the wallet without hesitation. She opened it quickly, flipping through the contents like she knew exactly what she was looking for. My stomach dropped as I saw her fingers pluck out a few bills. She folded them neatly and slipped them into the pocket of her pajama pants, all in one smooth motion. My mind raced, struggling to process what I was seeing. Why was she taking money from my dad? Was she planning to pay him back? Did he know about this? Questions buzzed in my head, but none of them made sense. It wasn't over, though. Laura moved again, this time heading toward the hallway where the bathroom was. I crept forward just enough to see her open the medicine cabinet, the small creak of the door cutting through the silent house. My dad always kept his prescription medication there, along with a few over-the-counter bottles. Laura reached for one of the bottles, twisting the lid off with practiced ease. She sniffed it cautiously, her nose crinkling as she examined the contents. I held my breath, my body rigid with anxiety. For a brief moment, I was certain she was going to take something. But instead, she just stood there, the open bottle in her hand, glancing over her shoulder as if to make sure no one was watching. And that's when it happened, our eyes met. Her face went pale, and her eyes widened as she realized I had been watching. She quickly put the bottle back in the cabinet and stood there, staring at me in silence for a few seconds. I was too scared to move, but somehow I managed to slip back downstairs to my room and crawl into bed, pretending to be asleep, my heart pounding in my chest. The seconds felt like hours, but eventually I heard the door creak open and then close again. I didn't dare look, but I wasn't sure if Laura had come into the room. Minutes passed before I felt it was safe to look around. I cautiously glanced up, and there she was standing over my bed, her figure silhouetted against the dim light from the hallway. I froze, my blood running cold. She whispered in a quiet, angry voice, "I saw you watching. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just wanted to make sure your dad was taking his medication." I couldn't believe what I was hearing as Laura tried to explain herself, but I wasn't buying it. She then whispered, "Merry Christmas," before leaving my room. The next morning, after we opened our presents, my dad stormed into the living room, angry and demanding, who took $60 out of my wallet. I glanced at Laura, and she looked back at me with guilty eyes. I knew it was her, but I stayed quiet, not wanting to escalate things further. Later, as my dad continued to question everyone, I couldn't stay silent any longer. I told him everything, how Laura had sneaked around, gone through his wallet, and even messed with his medication. At first, he didn't believe me, but when I mentioned the pills, something changed in his demeanor. He finally realized that I wasn't lying. That night, my dad and Laura had a heated argument after I told him what I saw. She denied everything, taking the money, messing with his medication, or sneaking around, and accused me of making it up. My dad was conflicted and didn't ask her to leave, which left me uneasy. I locked my bedroom door, but later that night I heard the handle jiggle. Someone was testing the lock. Terrified, I stayed frozen until the sound stopped. The next morning I asked my dad if he'd tried to come into my room, but he said no. That's when I knew it had to be Laura. Overwhelmed with fear, I begged my dad to end things with her, scared of what she might do next. To my relief, he listened and broke off their relationship soon after. Laura left our lives, but the memory of that Christmas Eve, a night meant to bring warmth and joy, lingered with me in a way I couldn't shake. The events of that night replayed in my mind often, each detail etched deeply into my memory. Even now, Years later, I can't think of Christmas without recalling that sense of fear and unease. It was a Christmas that should have been magical, but instead, it left me with a story I'll never forget. The moral of this story is that trust is a fragile yet essential foundation in relationships, and dishonesty or suspicious behavior can shatter it irreparably. It's also a reminder to trust your instincts and speak up when something feels wrong, as silence can enable harmful actions to continue unchecked.